About 5 years ago, I decided to leave my career in consulting to come back here to my alma mater to become a teacher. And I encountered something that I didn't expect. I found out that most of my students suffered from a paralyzing fear of failure. And that fear, well, let me just take a step back and tell you guys that I'm not about to go off on the millennials and tell you that you're an entitled generation. In fact, what I'm about to do is I'm going to talk to students and teachers. Because here's the thing, I believe that teachers and students, in their own way, are afraid of failure, and therein lies our problem. And if we can teach students how to fail and learn from that, I think they can be more successful. And if we as teachers can accept failure as part of our life, we can again do our job better and again help students. So, how did I first notice this? It was definitely the 2 a.m. emails I was getting from students telling me that they were, quote, freaking out. And it was usually for something very minuscule, a couple of points on a homework, and I kind of giggled it off, but I did start to look into this, and I started to find out this is not a surprise. Educators and psychologists find that these students coming into colleges, they become more achieved and overachieved in some ways. They are very adverse to failure, and they're very scared of anything short of 100. And then as I looked into this further, the data shows exactly what I thought. Students seem to be getting smarter. Their GPA on average is increasing in college. Now, some of you may say, well, this is grade inflation. The students aren't getting smarter, but I believe in my heart of hearts that the students who come in every single year, it's more competitive, and we're seeing that the caliber of student is increasing. So I believe that the students are getting better and brighter. You know what else is an upward trend we're seeing is the amount of information online. We have 50 times the amount of websites today that we did 15 years ago. And thanks to Google, you can Google anything you want, and you can find that answer in one of the trillion websites that are out there. So you would think that if grades are going up and we have more information accessible to us on any device, including mobile phones in our pockets, why isn't anxiety going down? It's actually the opposite. According to a study of counseling centers across not just the university here, but all universities, anxiety is increasing amongst students, and it's actually one of the top reasons that students seek help at a counseling center. Now, I realize that it's not fair for me to judge students because as a consultant, I was very accustomed to failure. I failed day one, and I failed up until my last day. But what do I mean by that? Do I mean total failure? No. In fact, I don't believe in total failure. I believe that most failures in our life are incremental failures. And the difference here is that a total failure ends everything as we know it. If I fail this test, my life is over. But really, failures are incremental, meaning that if I take the moment and learn from this, the next time down the road I'm faced with the same challenge, I'll know what to do because I took the time to learn from that past failure. And so, what I learned as I progressed in my career, I became an executive in this company, and I started noticing something. A lot of my wisdom didn't come from intelligence. Little known secret, consultants aren't necessarily smart people. But what consultants are good at doing is getting experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. You see, as an executive, when I would coach someone or give them advice, much of that wisdom I was giving them was not based on my intelligence, but based on my past failings. And so, what I started to learn was that, I would learn from failures and that was okay, and my job would get easier. But you know what happened when my job got too easy? They would promote me and they'd give me twice as much work, and I would start a whole new cycle of failure. And I failed until I became an executive, and I never stopped failing. So why? Why does this happen? Why are students afraid of failure? This is something I wanted to figure out. So I started seeking what is the source of this fear. And I did what most people did. I wrote it off as a millennial entitlement issue, stemming from the fact that everybody got a trophy. Even if you came in last place, guess what? You're first place. And that's true in some regards, right? If you tell somebody, you didn't get an A+, but we're going to give you an A+ anyway, well, that does create the wrong kind of mentality. But here's the thing. I have students who come to me in my office hours and say, I never was told that. My parents told me, you got a 98? Why didn't you get 100? And then they would start to agonize over those 2 points. I'm like, you're in the top 2%. And they said, that's not good enough. I actually had a student one day tell me, I'm failing your class. What can I do? I looked at his average and I said, you have an 85 in this class. And he goes, yeah, but that's failing. I'm like, no, it's not. It's a B. It's a solid B. And he said, well, it's failing to me. And so what this really is not entitlement. It's perfectionism. And whether you are coddled or whether you were treated that way with being told the 98 wasn't good enough, what it does is it creates this perfectionist mentality that anything less than 100 is failing. And that is a source of fear. The second source I notice is the fear of the unknown. And this is obvious with students. Look at a student's life. As they progress through life, they've known where they're coming from for over 16 years, and they progress and they know where they're going to be. And as you start to approach the senior year, this is the first time in a student's life that they don't know what's going to happen next. And that is scary. So what do? Sometimes students go, I'll go to grad school. I'll just keep it going. And that's fine. But some of them say, I'm going to get a job. Okay. What do you want to do? What pays the most? No. What gives me the best chances of getting a job? And I would always say, take a step back. What do you like? What do you want to do? And they'd say, I want to get a job. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm asking. Have you thought about doing this? Well, I'd love to do that, but I hear that's not likely I'm going to get a job if I choose that major. So I'm going to go choose this other thing that I don't like. And I'm going to work hard at this thing I don't like. You know what that is? That's stress. Working hard at something you love, that's passion. And I want my students to find passion, not stress. And let me let you in on a little secret here. The fear of the unknown is something I as a teacher deal with all the time. In fact, adults in the room will tell you that the first time you have a baby, or the first time you get married, or the first time you buy a house is a scary experience because it's unknown. You've never experienced it before. But let's say you buy your third house, or you have your third kid, or hell, have your third marriage. It's not that scary because you've been through it before. So adults are scared of it too, and we don't like to admit it, but we are fearful of failure too. And then this third fear is the fear of loss, what we call loss aversion in the ethics department. I have students who walk into my office and tell me, I failed your exam. Am I going to still be able to keep my A? And I said, the question you should be asking me is, can you help me figure out why I didn't learn? Can you help me figure out what was wrong with my study strategy? But what they're focused on is, am I going to lose the A? Because if I lose the A, I lose the 4.0. If I lose the 4.0, I lose the internship. If I lose the internship, I'm going to lose the full-time job. If I lose that full-time job, I'm not going to be happy. So this exam is going to determine my happiness 20 years from now. And I would say, calm down. It's going to be okay. But no, that's not necessarily the case. But we fear losing things. And I've seen great students, good students, who cheat not to lose that 4.0. And a lot of people will get mad about that. They say it's an entitlement thing. And I say, no, it's not. Because most students I've ever caught cheating are not bad people. They just freaked out. They were afraid of losing that 4.0. And that fear of losing something, we will feel twice as much emotion about losing something as we will feel joy from gaining something. And you know what? Teachers are afraid of losing too. I was at a teacher's workshop at South by EDU, and I was on fire. I was so excited. I was all about innovation and disruption. I was like, let's get home and let's get back to school. Let's teach some students. And I ran into this one teacher who was also excited about it, but she said, here's the problem. I'm not a tenured faculty member. I'm not guaranteed my job, and that means I'm renewed every single year. And 70% of my evaluation is based on teacher evaluations. And so when I introduce new technology and new methods in the classroom, a lot of times innovation gets disruptive and the students don't like it and my evaluations go down. So what happens here is that I'm incentivized not to tick off my students, which means I'm incentivized not to innovate. And that is so sad. This teacher knows they want to do a great job, but they also don't want to risk losing their job. And so what's the plan? What are we going to do? Well, I'm going to talk to two groups of people here. I'm going to talk to the teachers first. Teachers, we need to give our students permission to fail. Students are excited about this probably. And I don't mean that we give them permission to slack off. I don't mean we give them permission to have lack of due diligence. What I'm talking about is tell them that failure is going to happen. And when it does, it's all about how you react. When you fail, do you take the time to learn from it? Is a teachable moment for you? And if you actually learn from failure, it can be a good thing. When I have a student come in and says, I failed your exam, am I going to keep my A? I say, no, what you need to focus on here is, how did you prepare for the exam? And we look at the flaws in their strategy, and then we say, okay, let's fix those flaws. And then the next exam, if you really do learn from what you did wrong here, you're going to do better on the next exam. But the student who points fingers at me and says, no, it's your fault, not mine, and they've refused to learn from it, will typically continue to fail my exams. And teachers, here's the next one. You need to give yourself permission to fail. If you do that, you will be successful. When my department chair came to me the semester after my first semester here, I got my teacher evaluations back, and I were okay. And I said, okay, my goal next year is I'm going to get better scores. I'm going to get really good scores. And he said, don't focus on your scores. Just like we tell students, don't focus on the GPA. Let me tell you this. Ask your teacher if they care about their teacher evaluations. And he said, if you focus on the scores, you're not going to innovate. You're going to be scared to innovate. Every time you come up with an idea, you're going to think, how will this affect my scores? And you will not want to innovate. And that's bad. He said, so here's the thing. If I know you're trying your best, if I know you're trying to innovate and improve the learning for students in the classroom, even if your scores go down, I will support you. So don't be afraid of that. So what he did there is he gave me permission to fail. And because he gave me that permission, I wasn't scared to go in and try things in the classroom. I wasn't scared to try different methods that were outside of my comfort zone. And it helped me be more successful by giving me permission to fail. All right, students, we need to change our mentality about failure. And we need to stop saying that failure is not an option. That makes sense if it's halftime and you're down by 7 points and you need a motivator. But that is not realistic. Failure is an option. It's an option in life. It's an option in business. It's an option all the time. And what you have to understand is that failure is an incremental process. If you fail, your life, is it over? It may feel like it, but is it truly over? Because if you can learn from that failure, it's a good failure. You may not think there's good failure, but there is good failure. The failure that we learn from is good, but if you refuse to learn from it, it's bad. And here's another fun Google just when you leave today. Go look up successful people and see what they say about failure. Look what Oprah says about failure when she lost her first job, when Disney was fired from his first job, when J.K. Rowling wrote her books, when the guy who invented the Dyson vacuum created his vacuum cleaner. It took him over 4,000 prototypes to make it happen. My favorite failure of all time is this guy right here. He said this: I've missed over 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost over 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and I missed. Who said that? Michael Jordan, that's right. This failure right here, look at that guy. What a failure, huh? And what I love about this is that we always remember Game 5, 1998 against the Cavs, when he shoots the ball and he wins the game and everybody goes crazy. We remember that last shot. Nobody remembers the 26 times that he missed. And what he says at the end is the best part. I have failed over and over and over again, and that's why I'm successful. And what he's really saying is, I have failed, I got up, I learned, I moved on. I failed, I got up, I learned, I moved on. Do you know that when he was a sophomore in high school, he tried out for the varsity team. He was too short. He didn't make it. Imagine if he was all pouty about that and he said, oh, forget it, I'll just become a baseball player. Oh, that's so scary. I'll give you one more example of how, just like Michael Jordan, you treat failure like an incremental learning opportunity. When I taught Intro to IT, I wanted to figure out a way to teach SQL to students, which is a coding language for databases. The problem is, when you teach somebody to code, how do you teach a classroom that looks like this? I could get up in front of all of them and start to type and say, everybody follow what I do, but they would just copy me and they wouldn't really learn. So I took this method kind of called team-based learning. I took a hybrid approach of it, and I put them into groups like this. And we gave them some instructions that taught them along the way, and then they took a quiz as a group. And what do you think happened? It was an absolute fail. But here's the thing. I had students actually yelling at me, telling me, and this is the worst one, frankly, I didn't learn anything today. You know, as a teacher, that is the worst thing you can hear a student say. And so I had two options. One was I throw the assignment out and I beg for forgiveness and I say, please don't give me bad evaluations, and I never use the assignment again. But if I take my own medicine, I learn from that incremental failure, and what I do is I ask questions and I try to figure out what went wrong. And what I found out was this: there were only two little things that were wrong. I needed to give students the lab ahead of time so they could practice before they came in. And then I needed to give them the opportunity to work in smaller groups. So instead of groups of 7, they worked in groups of 3. This made all the difference. but we still failed. There were some issues that happened. And so the next semester, a year later, I tried this assignment out. And here's what happened. There was a young man in that class who had never been exposed to SQL in his life, and he tried SQL for the first time. Fast forward 2 years, I run into that student at a career fair. And I run into him and I say, hey, how are you doing? What's going on these days? And he says, oh man, I think about you all the time, which is a little odd, but I said, why? And he says, do you know almost every day I use SQL? I use it to pull reports, I use it to do data analysis, and because I was able to put it on my resume confidently, as beginner level even, I got hired and I got this job. Now think about that. If I had been fearful of failure, I would have thrown that assignment out and I would have failed him as a teacher. But I didn't. I decided to increment on that. I decided to learn from that failure. And because of that, he is now successful in his job. So in the end, what we have to figure out here is success is something we should teach. The 7 effective habits of people is a great thing to teach. But here's the thing. If we only teach success, then we are glossing over the fact that failure is part of life. And I believe that we should teach that success looks more like this. It's messy, but it is an incremental set of failures that leads us to that. And if we can teach students this, students will be more courageous to try, to innovate. They will be more resilient, and they will be able to adapt in an ever-changing world. And teachers, if we accept failure as part of our job, we will get better. And when we get better, our students get better. So here's your homework. By the end of the day, you need to pick one thing that you're going to fail at. Students, what class are you afraid to take that you know you would learn a lot in, but it would ruin your GPA? I want you to be failures. Teachers, what innovation in your classroom do you want to do, but you're afraid what it's going to do to your students' perception of you? I want you to be failures. I want us all to be failures. And so I leave you with this thought from Max Lucado, who says this: let your failures refine you, not define you. Thank you.